Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Barrett with the Ohio State University Extension. Today, we're going to talk about emergency preparedness for farm markets and farmers markets, how to get started, and what does emergency preparedness actually mean. In today's society, there's lots of changes. When lots of big crowds are around, there's lots of things that can happen. Our aim is to help you as a market manager or business owner prepare for any kind of emergency and develop a plan so that you can communicate that plan to your team and to your vendors. How do you plan for lots of customers? This becomes a big challenge. As you can see here in the photos, the one side we have the farmers market and we have a big crowd, lots of people one place. There's lots of things that can happen, from a basic slip and fall to, unfortunately, some of the situations with active shooters when lots of people are around. On the other side, we have the pumpkin, where folks are having a good time at the farm, putting their face through these holes to have a good sign. There's lots of incidences that could happen there as well, depending on the activity going on. When you have lots of customers, the focus becomes risk management. What are you willing to take on yourself? What is the market willing to take on themselves, or the farm owner willing to take on, versus what do you want to transfer to something like insurance or another means of controlling that risk? So we put together this to kind of help with the whole development of a plan, or putting your mind around what's actually going to happen. So the first thing is prepare there on the screen. So prepare is doing what we're talking about today. What are the risks? How can we avoid those risks or transfer those risks? When something does happen, how do we respond and mitigate or implement that plan we developed? After the event is over, the emergency, how do we recover? And then finally, how do we improve for the next time? And so we're not talking today just about things like an active shooter or an active aggressor. We're talking about even more things that affect the business. What if the cell phone tower next to a farmer's market is out and nobody can use Square? That becomes a big issue for continuity of the market and continuity of that business. It affects how customers then view that market. So what are the backups in preparing for those types of basic emergencies? Here's that photo at the farmer's market. Lots of people standing around. We can get lots of crowds. We have to plan for not only helping vendors with those specific issues of dealing with customers, but what happens if something happens to the overall market? It becomes a challenge. Those vendors are usually there just to make their money, promote their business, and make sure their product is getting out. They do also support the other vendors, but do they think about what are the possible impacts of having a lot of people around in this kind of situation? One of the big things that we talk about, or should be talking about, in this risk management is this kind of issue. Maybe a smaller market, not a lot of people around, but lots of produce, lots of opportunity for contamination of produce, depending on how we're dealing with that, what we're requiring vendors to do, and what customers understand to be produce safety. So when we talk about risk management, we really want to perform this type of risk analysis. So we'll give you an example here in a second, but we want to determine our actions in each one of these categories. So low severity and low frequency, something that doesn't happen very often. It's not, nobody's really at risk for passing away, or the business won't completely fail, but it's something that is an issue. So we decide whether we're going to reduce that risk by making a plan or coming up with options, or just accept that risk in some manner, all the way to high severity and high frequency. So that's where we would reduce that risk, or we might transfer it through insurance or avoid it completely. So avoiding means maybe it's an activity that someone wants to do at the market or at the farm that we just determine it's too risky, too often, and we're not going to be able to do that activity at all. Sometimes that decision is easy to make because the insurance company says, we're not covering that. Or sometimes there's enough vendors in a farmer's market situation that they would say, we don't want that risk on us as vendors to make that activity happen. So here's some examples of those types of risk. So a low severity or low frequency, this would be something like a slip and fall at the market. We could kind of just accept that, but I think most of us want to look at insurance and make a plan to address that slip and fall. So in preparing for making an emergency plan, it's not just saying, oh, we're just going to write this off and have the insurance deal with it. We also want to take care of the customer so that our brand of our market is important to us and it's not affected by any kind of a situation that might happen. So planning to address might be making sure that there's no curbs they can step off of easily. We can make sure that we have first aid kits and we're ready to address a slip and fall as soon as it happens. A lot of times this is a skin knee from a young child or somebody that doesn't quite have their balance all the time that might fall and be injured in some way. We might be all the way up to breaking a hip, unfortunately, but we want to kind of figure out what we can do between now and then to make it happen or to avoid that problem. Low severity and high frequency would be something like a yellow jacket sting. It's going to happen a lot, especially in the month of September, when those insects change their food from protein or little insects they eat to where they're actually wanting to eat more carbohydrates. So if you ever do a Labor Day fair or event like that, you know that they're after those lemon shakes. So how do we deal with those yellow jacket stings? So part of that might be insurance, but insurance probably is going to be like, well, it was a sting. It's not a huge deal. It might be something you're more accepting of, but it's going to happen often, and then making that plan to address. So in that first aid kit, we might have some sting wipes and be able to hand that to a parent or a customer to make that sting pain go away in the meantime. We might also plan like a little handout to give to customers. Here's what happens when a yellow jacket stings. No, it's not a honeybee. This is why it's happening. Then the high severity or low frequency, this might be that active shooter aggression kind of thing. It would need very specific training for the farm, the farmer's employees, or the farmer's market, and all the vendors. How do they deal with that? What happens if something like that does happen? And it's not just that active shooter, it can be aggression. It can be somebody that's really upset about a product they got that didn't meet their specifications. It can be an aggression of you're already sold out of peaches. And you think, well, that's never a big deal. But there's always that customer kind of situation where they become a little bit irate. And we need training for all of our folks to help them deal with that situation. And then finally, that high severity or high frequency. A lot of times it's an activity and we need to talk about, does that activity need done? Some of that might be, will insurance actually cover that activity? I'll show you a photo here in a minute. One of those might be at farms and farmers markets. We deal a lot of times with having a corn area where the kids can get down in like a sandbox and play. Some farms have decided, in some farmers markets, let's use soybeans because it's kind of neat. The Soybean Association maybe gave us crayons to do an activity with the kids. But soybeans are very different. Soybeans swell when they get in a child's nose, and then that becomes an emergency kind of situation. So thinking about each activity we do, if it's high severity, where it might be a hospitalization or something, and it can happen often, like our example of the soybeans, do we actually need to do that? And a lot of times insurance will answer that question. If you told them that your farmer's market wanted to put in a zip line, I guarantee the insurance company will say, well, do you have a plan? Have you talked to your State Department of Agriculture about how to design that? And your insurance company might automatically say, your coverage doesn't even cover that at all. So the policy doesn't even work. So think about how you can avoid some of those or transfer some of that risk. When it comes to individual activities and thinking about a plan, really looking at something like this. We have a selfie kind of culture now. So people want to get that Instagram perfect photo, that Facebook ready photo, and so they're willing to maybe kiss a fruit or a vegetable. That becomes then an issue for you from produce safety standpoints. They might be trying to get the perfect picture and pick up something they can't hold, like the pumpkin here. So thinking about what those possibilities are, maybe making some selfie stations for photos, because we know what's going to happen, versus letting people do kind of whatever they want. And here's that example of lots of people walking up and down this aisle. So it's nice we have this aisle wide enough that people can walk. But as you can see in the center, we have an issue because there's a big curve, that there's a drop off. So what can we do in that situation? What are the possibilities? Can we paint that? Can we put cones up down through the middle? We probably know we have an issue, but how do we actually deal with that to prevent any slip and falls? Because it can happen often in this type of situation. This was actually a farmer's market in Salt Lake City, and I saw several people trip. No one got hurt bad, but a long term, we could have a hip broken or lots of other issues with small children. Here's that example of a child playing in a corn kind of bin, like a sandbox kind of thing, that some people have also put soybeans in. So what is an alternative to this kind of activity if it's too risky for the business? Then here's one where, wow, this looks really cool. What are the possibilities of this kind of a festival? Is that tractor secured? Are we sure that nobody can get hurt on that tractor? Are they going to want to climb up on that tractor? What happens if 5 or 6 people get up on the back of that? So what are we inviting as far as risky situations? Another one besides just produce safety is the risk of actual food safety. So when we look at this and we're getting samples, doing things like that, what is our plan? Not just our policy, but what is our plan if somebody comes back and does say, hey, I think I got sick because I had this herbal tea? Is that something that's more on that vendor because they weren't necessarily following policy, or is it something that the market itself might have to deal with? Then here's an example of a pumpkin slingshot kind of thing. You know, we're getting this cannon up there and we're shooting this off a long way away. So where are the fences keeping people in? What direction is that pointed? What can happen if there's another malfunction in the machine? How far away are people from this machine? As we think about emergency preparedness, it's not just safety. We get a lot of folks that ask the questions about safety. Safety is things like putting in a fire control system, and we've mentioned a little bit of those kind of things, making rules, eliminating potential injury items, equipment backups like the cell phone situation or a credit card terminal or EBT terminal, et cetera, et cetera. It's having that kit in place to actually deal with a slip and fall. When we actually talk about being prepared for emergency, it's the plan itself. So we might make those little changes, have that kit available, but are the employees or vendors trained to use the kit? That's where emergency preparedness comes into play. So defining this from the National Fire Protection Association, it's activities, tasks, programs, systems that are developed and implemented before the emergency that are used to support prevention, mitigation, response, and recovery. So that cycle we talked about, how do you plan? How do you mitigate after it's happened? What's your response to that? And then how do you recover or improve after that's over? So talking about why to do this, these emergencies, disasters, we haven't even got to natural disasters yet. We'll talk about that more in the future. They do not discriminate. They can happen anytime, anywhere, to anyone. A pop-up thunderstorm or a customer that just is very not happy. Preparedness helps to ensure that people are safe, that the assets are safe for that business, and then we want the business investment itself to be a big part of that. Because one incident that results in a lawsuit or results in some other kind of a bad situation could ruin a market, ruin a farm business. We want to help and make sure a plan is put in place to make sure people are safe and the business continues into the future. Anything that happens and how you deal with it reflects on the brand. It will be remembered for a long time. So again, what does it mean to be ready? That prepare on the right-hand side, then respond to mitigate, recover, and improve practices. So in summary, for the beginning part, we want to make sure when those kids come out to the farm or visit the farmer's market, emergency preparedness is known. It's a form of business management. And as you move forward with these different strategies, consider all the risks and hazards that could affect the business. Consider your own responsibility as a participant in the market or an owner or employee of a farm to protect customers and employees. And our website for the plan is at u.osu.edu/agritourismready. And in this instance, agritourism is anywhere where folks gather to purchase agricultural products or experience farms. So that's everything from a farm to a farm market. Thank you very much. Welcome. I'm Eric Barrett from Ohio State University Extension, and we're continuing our series on emergency preparedness for farms and markets in Ohio. This is transferable to other states as well. We're going through the basics of presenting the plan, preparing the plan, and today we're going to talk more about the actual writing of the plan. So we've talked about emergency preparedness and risk management, and then what are these emergency action plans? A note for employers that have 11 or more employees that the plan must be in writing, kept in the workplace, and available for employees to review. For everyone, we encourage you to make this plan something that everybody in the organization knows about. In the instance of a farmer's market, that all of the members of the market understand the plan, have access to a copy, and know what to do in case of an emergency, everything from a natural disaster to an active aggressor or active shooter kind of situation. So why is it important to have these plans? It shows the public the business is responsible and concerned about safety. It protects you, the market, the farm, the employees, family, everyone else, and the property during a crisis kind of event. It also helps litigation to show that you are doing your best things you can do to be prepared for the emergency and deal with the consequences. It also thwarts Murphy's Law. Anything that can happen will happen. So having a plan in writing makes a big difference. Emergency action plans can be as simple as this. We've developed one very similar. It's in a flip chart form. On our website, which I'll show you in just a second, you can download this in a PowerPoint presentation and then edit it to be very specific to your farm or your farmer's market for every type of emergency you might be addressing. And then this kind of a flip chart could be handed out to help people prepare and help them to be part of that response to any kind of emergency situation. Here's what it looks like when you're on the website, and then you just cut it off at the red bar. It's downloadable, so you can put your farm name in here or your farmer's market name into this. The website is u.osu.edu/agritourismready, or on any search engine, you can search for agritourism ready. We're defining agritourism as everything from a farm market to a farmer's market on up to folks that have like corn mazes or wineries, things like that. This OSU Extension bulletin is online. Every part of it, besides just the flip chart, walks you through how to deal with risk management and how to write the plan for all kinds of different scenarios. It also has scenarios that you can do activities with employees or other market members to show them what might happen or how to address when an emergency does happen. So we talk about a roadmap as the first start of this plan. The roadmap is a plan page for each topic. So a topic might be a natural disaster. It might be a fire. It might be an electrical outage. It might be a cell phone tower outage in the event of a farmer's market that needs that for Square and EBT. So each type of activity or topic has a separate page. Then it's a checklist for each plan page. So who do we contact? Who do we call? What are the procedures? In the case of an active aggressor, it's something like, run, hide, fight, things like that. So depending on what the situation is, the checklist is going to be different. Third, it's setting up a support team. So it's contacting local emergency preparedness folks. In Ohio, every county has an emergency office for that county that helps plan for natural disasters. They can help you with that. It's looking at local fire departments. Do they have a map, know how to get to your place? Local emergency squads, do they know where to go? Especially in a farmer's market situation where there's a lot of vendors, where's that one place they can drive in to help somebody that was in need of help? Fourth, start to work your plan into place. So it's addressing that. Does it actually work in practice? And then implementing it. And the implementation is not only having the flip chart ready, but training people on how to use that flip chart. What's nice about this flip chart format is it's not a binder that sits on the shelf. It's not a binder that nobody sees. It's something that you can regularly look at. It's something you can open up onto the specific page to deal with the situation. So again, it's prepare, respond, recover from that emergency, and then improve practices for the next time something might happen. Your support team in details. Local fire department, health department, especially with produce safety and potential food safety issues, the emergency management agency in the county, local sheriff, local police, possibly an attorney if you have someone helping you with that aspect of your operation, IT support, and even your insurance representative. The insurance representative, it's always a good idea to have them visit the site, understand what the hazards are, and help you correct anything that needs corrected. Each of those team members has a unique role. You can always host a familiarization tour of the farm market, agritourism operation, inviting those folks in, giving them something as a group so they know if an emergency happens, how they can get into the operation, what a map looks like, and how to help people. Also, provide a copy of your finished product, that flip chart, to those team members so they know how you're dealing with emergencies as well. Starting the plan is sometimes not just listing the activity, but having all those contact numbers, whether it's the owner-operator's cell phone number, the market manager's cell phone number, whatever that is, to find the right person who might be on vacation on the day something happens, fire, sheriff, squad numbers, even things like gas or electrical supplier. So if something, transformer blows or something that's on a weekend, you have someone to call to try to remedy the situation. The health department for food and produce safety issues, insurance, IT, even equipment dealers. And that equipment dealer could be anything from a tractor and wagon on down to the folks that run the EBT equipment or Square to figure out what can we do to get these things up and running for our business. Also, city, county, and state organizations and other folks you can plan. So getting that group together helps you plan on what are the contact numbers we need. This roadmap that we talked about earlier is ultimately important. For every page, thinking about how to prepare, write the plan, how to respond when a situation does happen. And a lot of times that's a checklist of 1, 2, 3, how to do that. For example, on a lost child, it's number 1, make sure nobody leaves the area. Number 2, make sure we know what the child looks like, have a description, things like that. Recover, so we notify everyone that the child's been found, and then improve on what can we do better next time. So this roadmap is ultimately important. So starting this in general, it's filling in the pages you can download from the website, the online bulletin, just like you would with your management team. Start it yourself. What are the things I think we need to get started on to start a discussion? Second, when you get home after you start doing that or get to the business, review and update with the management team and market vendors to show them, here's what maybe you thought of that I didn't think of. Number 3, when the plans are really good enough draft, then that's the time to get that support team in to help review. And they'll make lots of adjustments and changes to that as well. That's number 4, making those final adjustments. And then finally, implement the plan, print those flip charts to hang up on site, train employees. And a lot of times when it comes to employees and members of the market, we really need to think about how we train people to ensure they take us seriously for emergencies. So first is planning how we're going to train. So we're going to say, well, today we're going to really focus on a medical emergency. It could be a slip and fall. So we make up a list. Okay, we have our plan sheet, and maybe we make up a little scenario of grandma was walking through the market. She fell down. She says her hip hurts. And so we plan that activity out. Then we tell the employee or the group, here's what we're going to do. We're going to help this person in this way. We're going to go through procedures in this way. Tell them exactly what's going to happen. Then showing them is actually walking through some kind of scenario, having somebody play grandma and actually what do we do? What is the process? Do we pick her up first? Do we not pick her up first? What are those things, and did they do it according to the plan? So we're going to show them how to do that. Then we're going to have them actually do it. So instead of us playing the role of the manager in the situation and that role play, then they're going to play the manager. They're going to walk through making sure that that plan is followed. And then after it's done, review. So then we're reviewing, this is what went well, this is what we need to improve upon, we skipped a step, whatever that was. So everything in training is plan, tell, show, do, review. And more details are available on our website. Starting to plan with maps is very important. Property and maps, directions to fields, access points between vendors, facility maps where maybe chemicals might be stored or first aid kits, landscape maps, things like that. Here's an example of a farmer's market in New York City, laying out exactly where those markets are, where the vendors are, where those streets intersect, very specific of what's going to happen. If we're going to develop this into a map then for emergency responders, we would put in maybe a Red Cross or something where they have access to pull them to different sites. So this is really important for them to be able to know, how do I get to the person that's hurt? Here's even a bigger one for an agritourism operation, and we've marked with X's where the emergency vehicle would actually come in. It would not come in the main driveway where regular cars are coming in, and then the specific points of where they might have to go, depending on if it's a slip and fall on a zip line or whether it's somebody that got hurt on a jumping pillow, things like that. Where can that squad get in to help someone? And then there's minimal elements for this emergency action plan on our website that you can go through. And there's also, think about an employee alarm system. So this might be a bell that rings. It might be a text alert kind of that makes a specific sound that alerts to them, this is the kind of emergency we're dealing with. It might be a tornado that's coming, whatever it is. And then the training requirements and what we want them to do. Emergency action plans must be, again, in writing, kept in the workplace, available to all the employees for review, and communicating it orally as well, and documenting training. And we'll go through some details on that. You can see them on the website. Here's some examples of emergency action plans from OSHA that talk about, you can look on their website and just Google that, planning and responding to workplace emergencies, what would actually happen. You can start your plan and go through this type of activity at u.osu.edu/agritourismready. On that website, it has the flip chart you can download, and it goes through the risk management we've talked about, as well as several scenarios to implement at your farm or farmer's market. Thank you.